From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, back after a lovely week on the North Cornwall coast. Well, thank the guys for standing in my absence. But yeah, it was lovely to spend a bit of time near a beach, not quite as warm as some of those beaches that I've experienced in Australia in the last few years, but it was bright. It was lovely to have a little bit of family time around the Easter period. And then coming back, and there's plenty of excitement building already. What with the announcement of the men's Ashes squad coming out for the Aussies?
Absolutely, Ali. Yeah, Brett Sprigg here in Sydney, where again I'm filling in for Jim Maxwell, and plenty of excitement here this week around that squad and the surprises, of course. Some players missing out. Another reminder, of course, it's only 6 weeks away. The ones that did miss out still have county cricket to put their name forward. There are a few Aussies getting around there, as well as in the IPL, of course. We can't forget that either, where Cameron Green put his name back up in lights a few days ago. So it's an exciting time for sure.
Hello, this is Charu Sharma for All India Radio. Just back in Bangalore after a trip to New Delhi. The DC squad of the WPL put 3 players together and we had a wonderful chat. Shreya, I beg your pardon, Shikha Pandey, you may remember, we had a chat with her on Stumped earlier on. We also had Tanya Bhatia, their little keeper, and this wonderful young bat that you will know who does wonderful things for India, including, of course, winning the Under-19 World Cup. And we also had Ms. Varma with us. And what was really fabulous and pleasantly surprising was how well they spoke. The program was much more about their journeys and not so much about cricket as such or the technicalities of it. They were delightful. What a shame, though, that DC are in the IPL off to a horrendous start. But, the action continues and some of it's quite riveting.
Yep, it is, Charu, isn't it? And those girls all have great stories to tell, so that must have been really, really interesting. Brett, great to have you on the show as well. Now, we're going to start this week with the famous Yellow Book. Now, this is the 160th Wisden Almanac, which has been published this week. It chronicles the last 12 months in cricket. It also gives out the prestigious award of the leading cricketers of the year. This year's winners, England men's captain Ben Stokes and Australia's Beth Mooney, an accolade which both players have in fact won before. And early this week, I managed to catch up with the editor of the Almanac, Lawrence Booth, and asked him if they were both obvious choices.
I think so, in a way. I mean, Stokes was an interesting one because it wasn't simply for his weight of runs and wickets, which is the usual criterion for that award. It was as much as anything for his transformative Test captaincy. He got England playing a brand of cricket, as you know. When he took over, they'd won 1 Test out of 17. He takes over and they win 10 out of 12, mainly in spectacular fashion. So it's not often a cricketer changes the perception of a format of the game, and Stokes did that. So I thought he was an obvious winner, really, and Mooney as well. I mean, she averaged 100 in one-day internationals for start last year, which wasn't bad. She scored 60 odd with a titanium plate in her jaw in the Ashes against England, and she starred in the Commonwealth Games where Australia won gold. So she often gets overlooked actually in the kind of discussion about the great Australian women players, but she, as much as anyone over the last 3 or 4 years, she has led the charge.
She's always been there, hasn't she? Now, of the 5 cricketers of the year, the famous 5, remind everyone of the criteria for this, because when they look at the list, some people might automatically think, well, why is that person on this list? So just run us through the names and remind us of the criteria.
Yeah, so the criteria first, they're basically two main rules. You can't have been chosen before. It's been going since 1889, and the emphasis is on the previous English summer. So it is a bit Anglo-centric, but that's how it's always been done. And it sort of differentiates it from other awards, I guess. The 5 this year were Tom Blundell, the New Zealand wicketkeeper Ben Foakes, the England wicketkeeper Harmanpreet Kaur, Indian captain Daryl Mitchell, another New Zealander, and Matthew Potts, the Durham and England seamer. So those are our 5.
And I suppose that sense of it being impacting on the English summer might answer the question as to, why there is only one female amongst the 5 when so much women's cricket is played around the world. But I just wonder, given the impact of the 100 now on the women's game and how big that is, do you think that will come a time where we'll have more women amongst that famous 5?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's something we are monitoring very closely, obviously. I mean, this year, for example, we tweaked the title of the leading. It's no longer a leading cricketer in the world and a leading woman cricketer in the world. It's leading cricketers in the world, one of which is a man and one is a woman, because we're worried that the female award was beginning to look a bit token. So we've done that. We are monitoring very closely. The problem, some people have suggested having 5 women cricketers as well as 5 males. The issue at the moment still, I think, is that there aren't enough professional women cricketers to justify that, and we'd run out of choices. But that's changing, as you say. That is changing very fast, both because of the 100 and because of the WPL, which started recently, which is the real big game changer. I like to have a woman in the 5, absolutely. They're never token picks. They're there because they deserve it. 3-4 years ago, actually 5 years ago, we had 3 women in the 5. So more women have been chosen in the last 10 years than previously. I mean, Wisdom was pretty slow on that. But we're monitoring the possibility of extra awards for women for sure.
Of course, in terms of those international women's names, it just depends who is the touring team touring England in that summer, as with the men. What about some of the other standout names in the book this year? Have you got some personal highlights?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Shane Warne died in March 2022, which was too late for the 2022 Wisden, but gave us a good run at covering his career in this year's book. And Gideon Haigh has written a terrific piece on Warne, probably the best writer in the game, on the best bowler ever to have played the game. That was a sort of nice pairing. We spoke to Warne's 7 landmark victims, so his 100th, his 200th, through to his 700th Test victims, the guys who got out, what it was like facing him, which was a nice insight into that. You talked to, 3 of those 7 happened to be English. So those, Alex Stewart was the 400th, Marcus Trescothick the 600th, and Andrew Strauss the 700th. And some of the points they make are quite interesting. Stewart says he wished he hadn't let Australia and Warne dominate England so much when he was a player. Trescothick said there was never any breathing space when you faced him. Even if you faced the likes of Muralitharan and Kumble, there might be a spell where you could knock them around. Warne never gave you that. And Strauss said that Warne seemed to know what you were thinking before you did, and that was his sort of great strength. So to get those insights was pretty special.
Lawrence, congratulations on yet another almanac, and congratulations to you and the team, and good luck for starting the next edition already. Thanks for being on Stumped.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks for having me.
Next on Stumped, one of the greatest cricketers of all time, Sachin Tendulkar, turns 50 this week. Over his 24-year career, which started in 1989, Sachin broke almost every record and had so many momentous moments, including winning the 2011 World Cup on Indian soil and being the first man to score a double hundred in an ODI, which he did in 2010. Later this year, when India hosts the Cricket World Cup again, a statue of the great man is expected to be unveiled at the Wankhede Stadium. I've been lucky enough to have a number of interactions with him, notably in 2014 when he was 40 years old. It was quite soon after his retirement. And he told me about his most meaningful 100 in his career. The most meaningful moment was back in 2008, scoring a century after the Mumbai terror attacks. It happens to be my most significant memory of him as well. I remember interviewing him on the field during the 2011 World Cup en route to that victory. But that 2008 was particularly momentous, significant, because being in the wake of the attack, Sachin himself, he is a Mumbaiker, he'd had a bit of a monkey on his back almost about not scoring match-winning hundreds in the second innings of tests for India. And so this particular day, it was a record run chase. Sehwag had got them off to a blistering start, and then Sachin, in one stroke, managed to score the boundary, which both brought up his 100 and took India over the line all in one moment. And the groundswell of noise, but of emotion as well. And it seemed almost that when Sachin dedicated that win to the people of Mumbai, he was doing his bit to heal an entire nation that was grieving. Charu and Brett, I'm sure you both got standout memories yourself. Charu, should we start with you?
Well, you mentioned one very important one to Sachin himself. That was a very important moment, 2008. But for starters, from all of us on Stumped, Sachin, happy 50th. Now,
Exactly.
What I have to say could take a few hours. So, Brett, why don't you start?
I will say, I have a memory, and it's a personal one, so it's not one of the all-time great moments, but certainly a story I like telling. And I'll say this, that it was a special thing for me growing up to go to a Boxing Day test. So I didn't live in Melbourne or Sydney then. I grew up in Perth. So every few years as a family, we would fly across on Christmas Day, and I'd be lucky enough to be there at the MCG. And this particular year was 2003-04, Sourav Ganguly's touring Indian team, and what was also Steve Waugh's last series, kind of a forgotten era for Aussie cricket. There were long-term injuries and Shane Warne's post-World Cup drug suspension and all the rest of it. So Australia has an understrength team, and their bowling attack, I recall, included Nathan Bracken and Brad Williams. Not exactly household names. And as I say, no Shane Warne, Stuart McGill was the spinner. But on this day, day one, Virendra Sehwag and Akash Chopra put on a phenomenal partnership. Sehwag made 195. Rahul Dravid made a few as well. And so the first two Indian wickets fell for nearly 300. So we're into the final hour. We'd been starved of action, or starved of wickets at least, from a home team's point of view. But it's okay because everyone's looking forward to seeing Sachin Tendulkar come to the crease. So there's the usual ovation and admiration as he makes his way out. And then he chases Brett Lee down the leg side, a nice diving catch by Adam Gilchrist, and he's out very first ball. And then that collective gasp of 70 or 80,000 people. I think they may have been sort of doing reconstructive works at the MCG, so it wasn't quite full capacity. But the disappointment when we realised we'd waited all day and wouldn't even get to see their very best, as good as Akash Chopra was that day, and Virendra Sehwag, to me, that underlined the effect he had. Because back then, he was India. I think in this day and age, cricket fans are a little more globalist. They know more about the teams. They might have a few favourite superstars in any given team. But back then, cricket fans came to see India to see Sachin Tendulkar. And I guess the same may have been true in India as well for a long time. But he's had a lot of triumphs, the little master. But I think of that rare day that he didn't, and just the effect it had on that huge crowd at the MCG.
My memory does go back to when he made his debut, and he looked 15 or perhaps even 11, because he just looked so tiny and so vulnerable when he made his debut that everyone's heart went out for him. And he made his debut against some of the fiercest fast bowlers in the world. And very soon, because the Indian team was still shaky at that point of time, there were so many references to, or even I certainly remember, the fact that he looked like the boy on the burning deck. There he was, this youngster, holding the hopes of India, even then at that very tender age. And of course, many wonderful memories. Back in '96, when I was doing the South African tour, 96, 97, but the Indian team was decimated at Kingsmead. And then the kind of fight-back century that Sachin made in Cape Town was incredible. 169 of the finest, most fluent runs ever seen those days. There's a storm of 1998. Very few people will forget that, fans of Sachin Tendulkar at any rate, because the great Glenn McGrath was made to all but cry. It was a terrific set of knocks then. And of course, we'll all remember the 2011. But, so many moments. And of course, with the ball too. He literally snatched the ball away from the skipper, saying, I'm going to bowl the last over. I think back in 1993 when he protected a very small score, some 5-7 runs in the final over and actually won India the Aero Cup. So, just any number of memories. But there's reference in the short piece some time back about what a wonderful person he is. And I think that ultimately overshadows everything, because perhaps some of his records will be broken. The 100 centuries. Kohli's reaching somewhat close to that, but we probably have to play another 5 years or so to get to that 100 centuries. But he did conduct himself, considering the weight of just more than 1 billion people, really well throughout his career. And ultimately, I think people will remember him for that, just being a gentleman and soaking in so much pressure with grace.
Charu, I just wonder, when it comes to Sachin, what expectations do you think the Indian public had for him, for what he would do in retirement? Do you think that people thought that he might go into coaching? We see him as a team mentor with Mumbai Indians, but, do you think people wanted him to be a coach and be more present, or to do something with the Indian national team?
I'm not so sure about the numbers there. Some might have, but not the bulk of the people. I think they just rejoiced and cherished his performances on the cricket field rather than as a support staff team member. But just very quickly, the effect that he had on Indian cricket, of course, was, as you mentioned, exemplified in that, and as he mentioned, the Chennai Test match in 2008. But having recently had a chat last night with Shafali Verma, she mentioned very clearly that her father said that he only watched cricket because of Sachin. Like so many other millions, he said once he was out, television off, or if I was in stadium, I just walk away.
Ratings plummet.
And he said, and Shafali said, that struck a chord with me. She said, that's what I want to be. The one person that people come to see this the match at the stadium, or of course turn the television on. So just a quick sidelight there. But yeah, I think Sachin's also smart enough earlier in his career to not want to be the captain very long. And similarly with coaching, I think Sachin is smart enough to know that as a coach, you can't really deeply influence the result of the game. It depends on the players out there. And maybe he has deliberately, consciously kept away from being directly responsible for the fortunes of any team, be it Mumbai Indians or whatever. Being a mentor is different. But I think he does realize that his equity might have been eroded if he were to be a coach who then at times loses matches. And people might say, oh, even the great Sachin can't hold the team together and the team's losing. So does he not have the brain for it? Or I think he's smart enough to realize that, he should just have people remember the best part of Sachin Tendulkar, which was his incredible genius batting.
What about his son, Charu? Because Arjun Tendulkar made his IPL debut for the Mumbai Indians in the last week. So the Tendulkars are the first father and son duo to play in the IPL. I had a look at how he got on, conceded 17 runs in his 2 overs. In his second match, he managed to take his maiden IPL wicket. I mean, how's that been received and how much attention is on him as the son of Sachin Tendulkar?
Well, it began as something which had enormous which the pressure was enormous on young Tendulkar. But, as he went along, I think he was honest enough to realize what his caliber was and what his own internal assessment was. And I think that pressure eased off Arjun Tendulkar because, one, of course, he's got a different forte, as it were. He's a lefty seamer. And Sachin, of course, being a batsman. Now, if Arjun Tendulkar wanted to ply his trade in the world of batting, that pressure would never have lifted. But he's a lovely young man. He takes his budding career rather lightly. And I think it's more Sachin who's the nervous father. And the kind of celebration after that first wicket in the IPL was incredible because, as Sachin said, well, finally Tendulkar has taken a wicket in the IPL because Sachin never did. But one can only imagine the kind of pressure that Arjun grew up with, having Sachin as a father. 95% of the time, people would imagine he would not have taken to cricket. But he did on his own. And Sachin admits that I didn't really push him. And, he's gone on to do as much as at least getting an IPL squad, getting a ball now, getting a wicket as well. So he's moving along well. But I'm not so sure about his long-term cricket career. And, of course, there will be the cynics who say that he gets this opportunities easier than others because he's got a Tendulkar name. But he's done well enough on his own, and he's a wonderful young man. So that counts a lot for me. He's very normal as well. You mentioned when you talked to Sachin, it was pretty normal. Arjun's a lovely young man.
Did you know he was a familiar sight often in the cricket nets on the nursery ground at Lord's because, of course, Sachin, the Tendulkar family have an apartment not far away from Lord's cricket ground when they come to the UK. And so, often there would be this young lad netting and people wouldn't really know who he was, but then all of a sudden you might have occasionally just noticed Sachin wandering by and watching it, and people realise, that's a Tendulkar, that's Sachin's son in the nets. And just, on a Monday afternoon, like in the autumn, not even during the cricket season. But yeah, good luck to him. He's grown up and he's in the IPL, so good luck to Arjun. Well, that is all we've got time for on this week's Stumped. So my thanks to Brett Sprigg for being with us and to Charu Sharma, and to all of you, of course, for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.